Thank you, John, for letting me speak on the call. This is like one of my favorite things to do. But I wanted to start by reading a story that I read like a couple months ago, and it really had a massive impact on the way that I thought about what I do as a leader and as a manager. So here it goes. This is from the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. In the early 1980s, a psychologist named Dov Eden published the first in a series of extraordinary results. He could tell which soldiers in the Israeli Defense Forces would become top performers before they ever started training. Eden is a physically slight but psychologically intense man who grew up in the United States. After finishing his doctorate, he immigrated to Israel and began conducting research with the Israeli Defense Force. In one study, he examined comprehensive assessments of nearly 1,000 soldiers who were about to arrive for training with their platoons. He had their aptitude test scores, evaluations during basic training, and appraisals from previous commanders. Using this information alone, he was able to identify a group of high potential trainees who would emerge as stars. And over the next 11 weeks, the trainees took tests measuring their expertise in combat tactics, maps, and standard operating procedures. They also demonstrated their skill in operating a weapon, which was evaluated by experts. And sure enough, the candidates Eden spotted as high potentials at the outset did significantly better than their peers over the next 3 months. The question is what information did Eden use to identify these high potentials? And if you were a platoon leader in the Israeli Defense Force, what characteristics would you value above all others in your soldiers? So it's helpful to know that Eden drew his inspiration from a classical study led by a Harvard psychologist, Robert Rosenthal, who teamed up with Lenore Jacobson, who's the principal of an elementary school in San Francisco. In 18 different classrooms, students from kindergarten through 5th grade took a Harvard cognitive ability test. The test objectively measured students' verbal and reasoning skills, which are known to be critical to learning and problem solving. And Rosenthal and Jacobson shared the test results with the teachers. Approximately 20% of the students had shown potential for intellectual blooming or spurting. Although they might not look different today, their test results suggested that these bloomers would show unusual intellectual gains over the course of the school year. The Harvard test was discerning. When the students took the cognitive ability test a year later, the bloomers improved more than the rest of the students. The bloomers gained an average of 12 IQ points compared with average gains of only 8 points for their classmates. The bloomers outgained their peers by roughly 15 IQ points in the 1st grade and 10 IQ points in the 2nd grade. 2 years later, the bloomers were still outgaining their classmates. The intelligence test was successful in identifying high potential students. The bloomers got smarter and at a faster rate than their classmates. And based on these results, intelligence seems like a strong contender as the key differentiating factor for high potential students. But it wasn't, at least not in the beginning. Why not? The students labeled as bloomers didn't actually score higher on the Harvard Intelligence Test. Rosenthal chose them at random. The study was designed to find out what happened to students when teachers believed they had a high potential, and Rosenthal randomly selected 20% of the students in each classroom to be labeled as bloomers, and the other 80% were a control group. So if you're like me, this story really raised some questions for you. It's questions like who in our lives could have succeeded if we had just believed in them, and what makes some people succeed and others fail, and really what is success really? And these are questions that we probably all need to answer for ourselves as leaders. And maybe a culture of giving to others and believing in others is what's going to take our business to the next level. I think it might be possible that the only way to create a culture of giving is to first start by letting others give to you before you choose to give selflessly to others. And I personally used to see independence as a symbol of strength, and I would view interdependence as, a dependency on others as a sign of weakness. And I think that this is true of many people who see themselves as superior and separate from others, is that if they depend too much on others, then they'll be vulnerable to being outdone and just vulnerable in general. And at this point in life, I've learned that I need to reject the notion that interdependence is the same as weakness, and that maybe the best leaders are more likely to see interdependence as a source of strength and a way to harness the skills of multiple people for the greater good. And maybe it isn't just the people that are closest to us that we should depend on. If we learn to reap the benefits of the weak ties in our lives, the people that we don't know that well, and be in a constant state of connecting others and connecting ourselves to others, we can reach a new kind of genius. great things are never accomplished alone. And I think that if you reach out to people, and if I reach out to people that I have the weakest ties to and the most dormant relationships with, that great things will happen. After all, the people that you know well have the same knowledge that you do. And the dormant ties to others provide a more novel, more unique kind of information than your current contacts. And I imagine a world where we've all lost this paranoia and developed a serious case of pronoia. What is pronoia? Pronoia is the delusional belief that other people are plotting for your well-being or saying nice things behind your back. And maybe if we work hard enough to give to others, that doesn't need to be a delusion for us. If we develop as a group, if we develop a norm of giving, members of our group will uphold the norm and they'll give as well. Even if they're more inclined to be takers or matchers, the group dynamic reduces the risks of giving. When everyone contributes, the pie is larger, and givers are no longer stuck contributing far more than they get. And we're a group, we're a community, a tribe, and a movement of people, and I think that we lose sight sometimes of how important the things that we do are. I think that sometimes we as managers and as leaders, we fail to recognize how much we really have to give and contribute to the world. And I think that that's more and more apparent the more you look into what else you can do other than work with us. The other day, I got a mean-spirited voicemail from a local community college about our advertising tactics, and it really made me think how much value they really add as an organization. And like a formerly very analytical person that I was, I decided to look up some numbers, and I learned that the average student 10 years after graduating with a 2-year degree from that community college makes, on average, $35,500 per year, according to a study completed in 2015. That's $3,000 below the national average income of people in America of the same age. Not only that, but those students on average have amassed $11,000 in student loan debt in the process, and that's just for the ones that actually get their degree, not including the large percentage of dropouts that they have. And I'm not saying this to bash the American public colleges and universities near me. In fact, I'm going to try to ignore those numbers in my future conversations with them, although some reform is probably in order. I'm saying it to remind myself and to remind you that we can bring 10 times as much value to people as almost any other educator or leader they've ever had or met, and at absolutely no cost to them. In our roles as leaders and mentors, we need to resist the temptation to search for talent first by recognizing that anybody can be a bloomer. And great leaders focus most of their attention on motivation and grit is just having passion and perseverance toward long-term goals, the ability to work hard and push through adversity. And that's just something that comes from desire. Above and beyond intelligence and aptitude, gritty people, by virtue of their interest, focus, and drive, just achieve higher performance. It's these people that allow us to have the greatest return on our investment in human capital, as well as the most meaningful and lasting impact. And that's what this is really all about. When we talk about recruiting and red zone phone jams and everything else that we can use to build our business, I think that the goal for everyone that's still a manager is not just to make money, but to have a lasting impact. And last year, I made this personal mantra, is that every day I will explore every way I can to find people whose development I'm excited to devote all of my energy to. And maybe our reasons why we give to others don't really matter. Maybe all that matters is that we do it. Maybe it doesn't matter if we help others for our own gain or if we help selflessly. Maybe it doesn't matter if you help someone because you like who they are as a person or if it's just because you see a glimmer of potential in them. Maybe all that matters is that we give and that we keep on giving, because in the end, your success might be measured by others in dollars and net worth, but you'll measure your own success by the change that you know you've made in the lives of those around you. Have an awesome day.